When we think about a war, we usually focus on the two sides slugging it out. But what if the real winner isn't even in the fight? Today, we're going to look past the headlines of the US-Iran conflict to figure out who's quietly benefiting from all this chaos. Okay, let's get into it.
You know, this line from Game of Thrones absolutely nails the theme of what we're talking about today. It's all about the difference between saying you have power and actually having it. When a leader has to constantly tell everyone they're winning, it often means the reality is, well, a lot more complicated.
So, here's how we're going to unpack this. First, we'll cut through that illusion of victory that's being broadcast. Then, we'll get real about the actual cost of this war, and I'm not just talking about money. That's going to lead us to the biggest question of all: who's winning without even fighting? From there, we'll see how the whole world seems to be turning towards Beijing, and we'll end by asking if the US is basically just handing over the keys to global leadership.
All right, first up, an illusion of victory. This is all about that massive gap between the official story we're hearing and what's really happening on the ground. I mean, just look at the timing here. On April 1st, you have President Trump giving a speech, literally declaring victory. You'd think that would be it, right? Mission accomplished? Nope. Almost right after he's done speaking, Iran launches a whole new wave of missiles at Israel. It's just a perfect example of how actions on the battlefield are speaking way louder than words from a podium. And if you look behind the curtain, things are even messier. Sources are describing total chaos inside the administration. The Secretary of War apparently forced the Army Chief of Staff to resign because they couldn't agree on strategy. At the same time, the blame game is already starting, with whispers that the VP is going to be the fall guy if peace talks go south. This does not look like a unified team on the brink of a decisive victory. That illusion of victory? Well, it comes with a really steep price tag. Which brings us to our second section, the real cost of war. Here, we're going to move past the rhetoric and look at the very real price being paid in both blood and treasure. So the official number is over 300 U.S. personnel injured, on top of 15 deaths. That is a heavy human cost. And is worth remembering, some analysts think the real numbers might actually be higher, that the Department of War could be downplaying the casualties.
And then there's the financial toll, which is just staggering. We are already talking about more than $3 billion in U.S. military hardware gone. Think about that. $3 billion of taxpayer money, some of the most sophisticated military equipment in the world, just wiped off the map. So what exactly does $3 billion worth of lost assets look like? Well, we are not talking about small stuff here. We're talking 8 critical KC-135 refueling tankers destroyed at one base. An E-3 Sentry AWACS plane, that's the military's eye in the sky, the flying command center that manages the entire air battle, taken out. And that's not even mentioning the advanced F-35s and Reaper drones. These are massive strategic losses. And this right here really shows the long-term damage. The U.S. is burning through its advanced Patriot interceptor missiles so fast that it's going to take 4 to 5 years just to get the stockpile back to where it was. This creates a huge vulnerability, and it's forcing the U.S. to go to its allies and ask to borrow theirs. So you have to ask the question, right? If the U.S. is paying this dearly, in lives, in equipment, in its future readiness, who is actually gaining from all this? And that question completely changes how we look at this conflict. That question leads us straight to our third section, winning without a fight. This is where we see how another global power is using this war as its own personal live laboratory, getting all of the benefits without firing a single shot. This ancient principle is the key to understanding China's entire strategy here. They're not jumping into the fight. Nope. They're playing the long game. They're watching, they're learning, and they're very, very quietly putting themselves in a better position. And here is their playbook, laid out for us. Step 1, they're giving Iran satellite intelligence to help pinpoint U.S. targets. Step 2, they're supplying the tech, everything from their Beidou navigation system, which makes drones deadlier, to advanced anti-ship missiles. Step 3, they're basically keeping Iran's economy alive by buying its sanctioned oil at a huge discount. And step 4, and this is the big one, they're treating this whole war as a dress rehearsal, studying American tactics so they'll be ready for a potential fight over Taiwan.
This chart really says it all. A whopping 80% of Iran's oil is going to one place, China. This gives Beijing tremendous economic power, and it effectively bankrolls the very conflict that is draining America's resources. They're basically getting a discount on the fuel it's feeding the fire. But this isn't just happening in the shadows with secret tech and oil deals. It's happening right out in the open, on the world stage. And that brings us to Section 4, a world turning to Beijing. We're about to see a massive diplomatic shift in real time.
You can see this clear domino effect playing out. First, the US starts clashing with its oldest NATO allies. So what happens next? Feeling squeezed by American unpredictability, leaders from places like Canada, the UK, and Germany all start flying to Beijing to make new friends and trade deals. And then you get this last part, which is just shocking. Key American allies in Europe, Spain, France, Italy, start blocking the US military from using their airspace for operations. Think about that. That would have been absolutely unthinkable just a few years ago.
And this is the result. All over the world, American leadership is starting to be seen as chaotic, unpredictable, even confrontational. And who's there to pick up the pieces? Xi Jinping is masterfully painting this picture of China as the stable, mature power that plays by the rules. He's positioning himself as the reliable adult in the room.
So when you put all of these pieces together, the military drain, the economic opportunism, the diplomatic fallouts, you're left with a pretty sobering conclusion. In our final section, we're looking at the ultimate and maybe unintended consequence of this whole thing, handing over the keys.
For China, the ultimate goal here is to create what experts call a multipolar world. That's a fancy way of saying a world where power isn't all centered in Washington, D.C., but is spread out among a few major global players. By getting the U.S. bogged down in the Middle East and helping to fray its alliances, China is hitting the fast-forward button on that new world order. Which leaves us with this one final, powerful question. While America is so focused on winning a war in the desert, is it actually losing the world? Is it, maybe without even realizing it, handing the keys to global leadership straight to Beijing? That's the thought we'll leave you with.